Lich Guard and Tomb Blades, are they worth the points? Time for another Win with Necrons video. Necrons, because you're worth it. Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, another Win with Necrons video, and in this one we're going to look at Lich Guard and Tomb Blades. Before that though, if you would like to keep up to date with the wonders of Warhammer 40k, not miss an upload on Necrons, then please give me a sub and hit the bell button so you don't miss an upload. Okay, so today we're going to look at two arguably controversial units. The Tomb Blades and the Lychguard, however you want to say it. I'm going to start off with Tomb Blades. Now Tomb Blades are actually quite a new unit to Necrons. It's one of those new units that came in a couple of codexes ago. When they first came out, not many people used them, and then GW thought, right, we're going to sort that out and we're going to force people to use them. So they did the Decurion, where you had to have a unit of Tomb Blades. And to be fair, this is where I started to use Tomb Blades myself. Now, well done GW. Now having said that, what I did for my models is I got some old school destroyers, so I thought they make great stand-in for Tomb Blades. So let's have a look at those models and have a quick look at the stats. Okay, so here we go. These are my old destroyers. These are obviously metal models, but I think they make great looking Tomb Blades as well as destroyers, which means that I'll have a unit which is multitaskable, which is great. Anyway, onto the stats. So movement wise, they move 14 inches, and that's because they've got the biker keyword. So great movement from these guys. Now in the keywords we've also got the fly special rule, which is really great. That means if you do get assaulted, you can come out of the assault and still shoot. However, you of course can't assault or do anything else, but you do get to shoot. So they've got that rule. They are weapon skill and ballistic skill 3+, so very nice there. Strength 4, toughness 5, so really nice toughness with 2 wounds each, not bad at all. Just 1 attack, but then they're not really close combat orientated, they're more shooty orientated. The standard leadership 10 from Necrons, and a 4+ save, pretty mediocre, although we can upgrade that, which we'll talk about in a second. So as you can see from the stats there, Tomb Blades are actually pretty decent, especially if you stack them with some of the other gear and guns that we've got available to us. Having said that, they are fairly expensive when you start diving into the points, and that's why a lot of people are saying, you know, Tomb Blades aren't really worth taking. Now, if you've been following this series of videos, you'll know that the idea with this series isn't necessarily to pick out the be and end all best units in the index. What I'm trying to do is run over each of the units, working out the best way that we can use them. Now, I personally think Tomb Blades are definitely usable in the Necron force. Yes, I must admit they are fairly expensive, but I still think they have a place in our army. So in terms of points, how much do they cost? Now, I've got a list I'm going to refer to here because there's loads and loads of options for these guys, and I don't have all the points on memory. So we can take between 3 and 9 Tomb Blades. Now as base, without any options at all, just 3 Tomb Blades is 72 points. So if you want to take a unit of 9, that's 225 points. For base, that's without the gun. Now the gun, as standard, it comes with the Gauss Blaster. Actually, it has 2 Gauss Blasters, and these are 18 points each. So you're looking at 126 for 3 and 378 for 9 of these Tomb Blades. I'm going to do minimum and maximum size units as we talk, and then at the end we'll talk about what is the best size of unit to take. So 2 Gauss Blasters, basically immortal Gauss guns, so strength 5, -2 AP, 1 damage. Pretty nice gun at 24 inches, and then we do have other options to exchange that gun. So you could take the Tesla carbines, which obviously again is the immortal gun, so strength 5 with the Tesla option with no AP, but any 6s you get 2 extra wounds. And these Tomb Blades have 2 of these guns. So that's the same points cost, 18 points for those. Now you can change for the particle beamer, which is only 10 points, is 8 points less per model. You get the extra strength, so strength 6, but no AP on this gun, and no special rule on 6s. So a bit cheaper option. If you wanted to keep the points cost down, I suppose it is an option, but apart from that reason, I think ideally you should be taking either Gauss Blasters or the Tesla Carbines, depending on your preference, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Now you also can take some war gear for these guys. You've got Shield Veins, which any model can take. It gives you a 3+ save as opposed to your 4+ save, but it is 6 points a model. It's quite a hefty price point, especially obviously if you're taking a larger unit, but for 3 guys it's 18 points. It's not too bad to give you a 3+ save. Now it depends on whether you want to take that and invest the points, which we'll talk about again in a second. So that is one option. Now the next piece of war gear, well, there's 2 pieces. You can only take one of them, so you have to make a choice. So the first option is Nebula Scopes, which is 3 points a model, and that ignores cover. It's pretty nice. And even though you've got the Gauss Blasters there with obviously the -2 AP, which at first thought, you think, well, that's the gun that I want to take, have -2 AP, ignores cover. But don't rule out the Tesla option as well. You can get all of those shots in and you have targets which are in cover. Let's say, for example, you have some scouts with the sniper guns in cover. You can flank these guys down the side of the table and target those, get a reasonable amount of shots out, and obviously take the cover save away, which means they only have a 4+ save. I think ideally you want the Gauss Blasters though with this particular option. Now the other option is Shadow Looms, and Shadow Looms give you a 5+ invulnerable save, but once again it's 6 points a model, so pretty expensive, but a 5+ invulnerable save, very nice, especially if you are going to use these, just as I described, in that flanking role. So obviously you can't take both of those options in one unit, but there's nothing stopping you taking a mixture, and as you can allocate wounds, that could be an option to have some 5+ invulnerable saves and then the rest with ignores cover in the unit, so you can allocate those wounds that you need that 5+ save to the particular models. But of course all of this pushes the points cost up of these guys, and I think that is why people are instantly dismissing these, because one Tomb Blade with, let's say, the Tesla Carbines on and then the 3+ save is the equivalent, almost the same cost, of 4 Immortals, and that's, 4 Immortals, we're going to put out a lot more firepower than one of these Tomb Blades, especially with the fact that you can't give these Tomb Blades Thy Will Be Done, which you can obviously your Immortals. So that's why people are sort of almost instantly dismissing these Tomb Blades. But I wouldn't necessarily do that, because what Tomb Blades have that Immortals don't have is they have speed and they have the extra toughness. So these guys are toughness 5, and that's pretty useful. That means that your standard bolt guns are going to be wounding these on 5s. Not only that, but they have 2 wounds each. Now we have talked about multiple wound models previously. Yes, 3 wounds is like the ideal number, or more of course. So if you do get hit with a D3 damage weapon and your opponent only rolls 2 damage, and of course your model is still alive. However, these Tomb Blades do have RP, Reanimation Protocol, so they are going to get back up on their full wounds, depending on how many you have in a unit. So how many are we going to have in a unit? Well, I think here is the beauty of Tomb Blades, because they can cover a multitude of roles. So you could arguably take 3 Tomb Blades, keep them really, really cheap. 102 points with the Beamer, keeping them really cheap if you want to, the same price as 5 Death Marks. They've got good movement, they're great for going out and getting those objective markers maybe that are on the flanks, especially for those Maelstrom missions. Yes, if they get targeted, a 4+ save isn't that great, so you might want to add the extra save to them. It does make them a bit more expensive. Personally, I wouldn't necessarily take them that way. I think if I was going to have 3, I'd still go Gauss Blaster, and I would put the 3+ save on there. I wouldn't bother with the 5+ invulnerable save or the ignores cover. I'd keep them cheap. If you take 9, it is very expensive, especially if you have all of the upgrades on there. You're looking at just under 500 points for 9 of these Tomb Blades. And as we discussed before, you can get a lot more immortals in your army for those points. I wouldn't necessarily take a big unit of 9 myself. I think personally I'd actually hit the in-between size, so I'd probably have 5 or 6 in one unit. Personally, I would take Gauls Blasters for the -2 AP, and I'd give them Ignore Cover. I might give 1 or 2 the 5+ Invulnerable save just to help with the saves. Sadly, I think really you've got to give them the 3+ save, because okay, they might get hit with weapons which will ignore your save anyway, but I think just having that 3+ save just makes them that much more survivable. There's a lot of weapons out there which just do -1 AP, which means that you'll get a 4+ save. Now if you've just got your standard 4+ save and you get hit with that weapon, it's a 5+ save, and there's a big difference between rolling a 5 and a 4. So I think I would definitely have them with the 3+ save. So how many points is that? So that's just over 300 points for that unit, so it's not exactly a cheap unit. They do give you versatility with the speed. As I said, they've got the extra toughness. They've got a reasonable amount of shooting. They've got 2 wounds. They're definitely a nice addition to a force, but it's probably fair to say they're certainly not the optimum unit to take for an army if you want to get it as competitive possible. But I think they do definitely have a place in your army, especially if you're thinking of going a bit more ground troop orientated. So if you are planning on taking a good amount of warriors and immortals, you would say cryptics and stuff there, maybe a couple of annihilation barges, etc., and you've got a nice flanks. The Tomb Blade option is quite a nice option for giving you that fast moving additional unit. 14 inches on these guys, that's pretty fast. So I'd definitely consider them. And of course I'm talking about Gauls here, which is just my preference. Don't forget, Gauls of course is rapid fire, so if you get 12 inches you get 2 shots each. The Tesla option is definitely viable, because that's automatically 2 shots at 24 inches, and of course any 6s to hit gives you those 2 extra hits. So definitely viable. Of course you do lack on the AP, but you know, it's definitely an option. And of course on top of all of that, they do have the fly special rule, don't forget that. So you can come out of assault and still shoot those guns. So a versatile unit, lots and lots of options. You can really tune these into either how many points you have left, i.e. you make your army, you've got 100, 200 points left. You can tune in Tomb Blades into that particular points area. Or you could take your Tomb Blades in a particular manner to match the rest of your army. Maybe you've got all Gauls Blasters with your Immortals, maybe all your Warriors with your Gauls, and maybe you want a Tesla option. This could be a Tesla option to send out, etc. So they definitely have a place. They are overcosted in my opinion, but yeah, let's have a look now at Lich Guard. Okay, so Lich Guard potentially should be the best unit in the codex. It's our cheapest way to get war size. It's a unit that has a 4+ invulnerable save. It's a unit which can help stop characters from dying. Okay, let's have a closer look at their stats. Okay, so Lich Guard. Now in front of you, you see my old prior models, and they're holding war size, so they make great proxies for Lich Guard with the war size. My Lich Guard are on the painting table at the moment. Interesting to note that these old prior models not only had a war sight, but they had a gun built into the war sight. Uzi 9mm, which was pretty awesome. Anyway, stat-wise of the Lich Guard. So we've got a 5-inch movement, so they move just like our other foot troops. Their weapon skill and ballistic skill is 3+. They have a very nice strength 5 and toughness 5, and 2 wounds with that as well. 2 attacks each, not bad. Leadership 10 and a 3+ save, and these models are infantry as well, so they are going to benefit from those special rules like My Will Be Done. Now they do have another weapon option available to them, which really does change the unit up. Check out this YouTube card here if you want to find out how to magnetise your Lich Guard with both weapon options. Okay, so you can see there on paper the stats are looking pretty good. Of course, These are reflected in the points cost of these models, so these come in at 19 points base. You have two options here with these guys, and to be fair, it makes the unit totally different depending on the options that you take. So the first option is to go for war size. Now the war size is 11 points each, so you're looking at 30 points for this unit. So 5 guys 150, 10 guys 300 points. One option. The other option is to go for the Hyperphase Sword and the Dispersion Shield, and these are another 8 points each. So you're looking at 190 points for 5 and 380 points for 10. Now the Lich Guard have a special rule which when a character takes a wound within 3 inches of them, they can stop the character taking the wound and they take the wound instead. However, the wound does turn into a mortal wound. Now of course the Lich Guard have reanimation protocols, so they can certainly deal with doing that. But be mindful of the fact that most of your characters are going to have a reasonable amount of wounds, and also they have living metal. And it's this special rule which a lot of people are saying that the Lich Guard make very good bodyguards. So you put on the Dispersion Shield, take the Hyperphase Sword, you stick them quite close to all of your characters, and then of course they can take the wounds from your characters. Now bear in mind that this ability doesn't work with Illuminor or the Traveller, because they do not have the Dynasty keyword. However, even a unit of 5 is pretty expensive, 190 points, just to be able to basically stand there and take a few wounds. Yes, okay, if your enemy getting close, you've got your Hyperphase Sword, which of course is -3 AP, only 1 point of damage, but it's a reasonable weapon in close combat, combined with the 4+ invulnerable save. Having said that, a 4+ invulnerable save for the points that we're paying, that right there is what makes them overcosted. These guys 100%, especially for the points that you pay, should have a 3+ invulnerable save. So I'm not sure what's going on there, Games Workshop, but it just doesn't seem to sit very well. However, it is an option if you want to use them that way, or if you wanted to, you could use them a lot more aggressively. Now these guys only move 5 inches, so you can hardly just put them on the table and just charge forward and just be really aggressive with them. You're going to need another means to do so, and that means taking a Monolith or your Night Scythe, the Deceiver, or possibly Nemesis or Obrion, just to try and get them close as possible. So you could use any one of those combinations depending on the armour that you've got or the points that you've got to invest in them. So if you do want to play them aggressively like this, I think you've got to commit to the points and have a unit of 10, or certainly a bigger unit than 5, just so that you've got the impact of when you actually get to your target. Now of course with the Dispersion Shield and the 4+ invulnerable save, very very handy for being in your enemy's face. Although yes, okay, the 3+ invulnerable is a lot better. At least you do have an invulnerable save. Pretty rare for Necrons apart from your Wraiths. But these units of course have 2 wounds and they have RP. So that does make them pretty survivable. And of course their standard save is a 3+ anyway. And then once you're in close combat, it's time then to deal out as much damage as you can. And these guys can put out a reasonable amount of damage. 2 attacks each. They're not beast in close combat, but they can certainly hit their target. And -3 AP, very nice. Now having said that, the other option of course is to go for the war size. And that will make the unit cheaper, so that makes it down to 300 points for a big unit of 10. And the war size are +2 to strength, so now you're hitting with strength 7 weapons. They're also -4 AP. And of course the war size does 2 damage rather than 1 damage on the sword. So very very nice weapons. You do lose of course your 4+ invulnerable save. So you have to pay your money and take your choice. Personally, I think I like the Warsight options. It's sort of like a do and die option, so you know, you get into close combat and you kill as much as you can, and you know you're going to probably take some damage back. But 2 wounds, RP, a unit of 10, it's a reasonable chance that you're going to be able to survive 1 or 2 rounds of shooting or close combat from your enemy. So I like the idea of the war size. I think the 300 point is a nice barrier as such to take. I think as soon as you go up to nearly 400 points with the shield option, I think that's a huge investment, especially the fact that you're going to be taking that monolith or your knight scythe, or you're going to be using the deceiver or the other special characters to get close to your enemy. So I think you have to bear that in mind. So I'll definitely be using the Lich Guard with the war size as my option. I don't think I'll be going down the small units of like bodyguard, Lich Guard with the shields. I think it's nice to use them as an attacking unit. The bodyguard option is definitely an option, especially if you're in an environment where your enemy is taking your characters out, maybe with sniper guns, etc. If that is happening, then potentially you could get your Lychguard in there and help your characters survive. Having said that, for that price, you could take more characters, so you've got to weigh up the options for the points. So both units definitely usable. I think you potentially can't just take a unit, you just plop it on the table. I think you've definitely got to have a plan around these units, how you're going to get them into close combat if that's what you're going to be trying to do, or of course just using them as a little bodyguard for your characters if you need to, if that's the environment that you're in. But I wouldn't necessarily say, right, Lich Guard, I'm definitely going to take them for my characters to keep them safe. I don't think you necessarily have to do that. It is an option if you're in that environment where you need to do that, but I think I would invest those points in other stuff. And as I said before, if you are struggling in the backfields, rather than trying to protect the backfields with units like a Lich Guard, you might actually be better off taking more aggressive units like Wraiths, for example, or Scarabs, something which is going to go out and meet your enemy to distract your enemy. That can be just as good. That can take firepower away from your backfield just as much as having, say, the Lich Guard with the shield taking those mortal wounds. In actual fact, that might actually be a better option. So there you go. Both units usable, playable, worth taking in the army, but definitely have a plan for them. Right, okay, so that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Beam me up.